Dust hangs in the air like a faded memory, drifting over cracked earth, splintered wood, and broken stone. A wilted plant lies trapped beneath a slab of concrete, its leaves curled, brown, and brittle. And yet, in the middle of that ruin, a single green sprout pushes through a split in the cement, thin, trembling, but alive. So the question rises quietly, almost like a prayer. What grows in a place where everything has fallen? Not far from that stubborn little sprout stands Manu, 12 years old, barefoot in what used to be his home. In his hands, he clutches a broken mango tree branch, the last piece of the life he remembers. Around him, collapsed walls lean like tired giants, and the roof that once sheltered his family now lies shattered at his feet. But Manu does not look at the wreckage for long. Instead, his eyes settle on that green sprout as if it carries an answer too important to lose. Later, as the sun climbs over the camp, Manu moves slowly between rows of temporary shelters. With a stick, he drags lines through the dirt, sketching houses from memory, strong walls, level beams, corners that hold, roofs that do not cave in. His drawings are rough and uneven, but his concentration is fierce. Line by line, it is as if he is trying to rebuild the world before it disappears from his mind. Meanwhile, a few steps away, Tessie gathers a restless circle of children beneath a patched tarpaulin. She is 38, a teacher by calling and by habit even now. Her voice is gentle, though exhaustion shadows every word. At dusk, when the camp grows quieter, she lights a small candle and places it inside a tin cup. The flame flickers against the metal, illuminating a folded list of names, the students she lost when the earthquake took more than buildings. It is her ritual, her grief, and her resistance all at once. At the far edge of the camp, Grandpa Joel works alone among fallen bricks and twisted beams. At 65, his back is slower than it once was, but his hands still know how to read a building. He lifts each brick carefully, brushing away dust as though uncovering hidden truths. Under one arm, he carries a set of rolled building plans, their corners worn and faded. Though the papers are old, he holds them as if they still matter. Then, pausing beside a snapped support beam, he runs his thumb over the splintered wood and sighs. "Walls built without proper support," he mutters, almost to himself. "No ties, no reinforcement. They never stand a chance." Most people are too tired to notice his words. Even so, they hang in the air with the weight of a warning and the possibility of a lesson. As night settles over the camp, sleep refuses to come easily. Families lie on mats beneath open skies, too frightened to return to houses cracked like eggshells. The food line grows longer each morning, and tempers fray by noon. Every creak sounds like danger. Every leaning wall looks ready to finish what the earthquake started. Fear does not leave. It simply learns how to hide until the dark brings it back. Then, just when the camp begins to quiet, the ground gives a low, uneasy groan. At first, it feels like a passing shiver, but a second later, a small aftershock rattles through the broken streets. Pebbles skip across the dirt, stones break loose from a damaged wall. Panic spreads faster than sound. Mothers snatch up children, an old man grabs his chest, someone screams. And though the shaking lasts only seconds, it is enough to remind everyone that the earth is still thinking. Afterward, silence falls, but it is not peace. Along a ruined street, a once bright mural of Caribbean flowers catches the last strip of sunlight. Its petals still blaze with color, but a jagged crack splits the painting down the center. Nearby, two neighbors whisper in tight, fearful voices. "If we had stored more water," one says. "If we had known where to run," says the other. Neither finishes the thought. They don't need to. The truth is already there. They were not prepared, and the ground may not be finished testing them. The next afternoon, while wandering near the remains of his home, Manu stops so suddenly that even the wind seems to pause with him. Between shattered stones, something green glimmers. He kneels, brushing away dust and broken tile with careful fingers. There, winding upward through the rubble, is a vine, thin, bright, and determined, as though it has chosen life in the very place death tried hardest to stay. Heart pounding, Manu calls for Tessie. She hurries over, then drops to her knees beside him. For a moment she says nothing. Her fingertips hover over the tiny leaves as if afraid to break the spell. Then, for the first time in many days, a real smile slips through the heaviness on her face. "Life still remembers us," she whispers. A moment later, Grandpa Joel joins them and crouches beside the vine. He presses his fingers into the soil around it, feeling what lies beneath the rubble. If a garden can find its way through stone, then maybe we can too. The three of them stare at that small green miracle. It is fragile, yes, but its message is stronger than the broken concrete surrounding it. And so, with grief still fresh and fear still close, an idea reaches root. Tessie rises first, eyes brighter than they had been since the quake. "What if we turn more rubble into soil?" she asks. Her voice is soft, but it cuts through the camp like a spark. It is not a plan yet, not exactly. Still, for the first time, the future does not feel empty. By the following morning, the work begins before sunrise. The community divides into small groups, moving with cautious purpose. Men, women, and teenagers clear rubble piece by piece, uncovering pockets of dark, fertile earth hidden beneath fallen walls. Children scatter around them, collecting small stones and shrieking with delight whenever they discover earthworms wriggling in the damp soil. Even their laughter sounds new, like something returning. Soon, the camp learns to look at debris differently. Old rebar, twisted and rusted, is pulled from broken concrete and straightened as best as possible. Instead of throwing it away, residents anchor the metal rods into the ground to form trellises. Before long, young vines begin curling around them, turning scars of destruction into ladders for growth. Broken buckets become seed starters, cracked basins become herb beds. Torn fabric scraps are used to line containers and protect fragile roots. Meanwhile, Grandpa Joel becomes less a laborer and more a teacher. He gathers a small crowd and lifts a cracked beam for everyone to see. "Look here," he says, tapping the splintered wood. "Too thin, no proper ties, no cross-bracing. When the shaking came, this beam had nowhere to send the force." Then he sets it down and holds up another beam, weathered but intact. This one had stronger joints, it could flex. That is the difference. A safe house is not the strongest one, it is the one that knows how to move without collapsing. At first, people only listen, then they begin asking questions. What is a foundation supposed to do? Why do corners fail first? How can walls be tied to the roof? Joel answers each one patiently, tracing invisible lines in the air to explain load paths, reinforcements, and the simple details that can save lives. And while the garden grows, something else grows too. Knowledge shared from hand to hand, voice to voice. Week by week, green climbs where gray once ruled. Bean vines wrap around rebar, pumpkin leaves spread across cleared ground. Cassava takes hold in deeper beds. Even the children start repeating Joel's lessons while they work, arguing cheerfully over which wall would stand longer and which trench would carry rainwater away. Hope does not arrive all at once, rather it rises the way the plants do, quietly, steadily, through every crack that makes room for it. Then one morning, when the air feels almost peaceful, the earth groans again. This time, the warning is deeper, harsher. Before anyone can call out, a strong aftershock surges through the camp. The garden shudders. Trellises sway. Raised beds collapse. Buckets roll across the dirt. Seedlings scatter like startled birds. People scream and run for open space, their bodies remembering what their minds were trying to forget. When the shaking stops, the silence that follows feels heavier than rubble. Some residents stare at the broken beds and shake their heads. Others mutter that the garden was foolish from the start, that the ground itself rejects whatever they try to rebuild. Fear, after all, is always looking for proof, and now it seems to have found some. Manu stands in the middle of the damage, frozen. Dust clings to the tears on his cheeks. "It doesn't want us to grow anything," he whispers, his voice so small it nearly disappears in the wind. Yet Grandpa Joel kneels beside a fallen seedling and lifts it carefully, cradling the roots in his rough hands. His own hands tremble, but not with defeat. "Even the strongest tree bends in the wind," he says. "That does not mean it stops growing." Then he looks at the broken beds, then at the people. "We rebuild smarter. That is how we honor the land and ourselves." Nearby, a cracked watering can lies on its side, leaking a slow line of water into the dust. Drop by drop, it darkens the soil. The damage is real, but so is the persistence. Even broken things can still nourish life. So the next morning, the community returns. Not cheerful, not unscarred, but steadier, more deliberate. Grandpa Joel gathers everyone and shows them how to reinforce the garden beds with stronger cross-bracing, tightly packed stones, and better anchoring points. If the ground may shake again, then we prepare for shaking. We do not build as if danger has gone forever. After that, rubble is no longer piled carelessly. Instead, it is sorted and used with intention. Larger stones are stacked into retaining walls that help hold the soil in place. Channels are shaped to direct rainwater away from roots and paths, so the next storm will not wash away their work. Stronger posts are secured more deeply. Lighter items are stored low to the ground. Each improvement is simple, practical, and born from what they have learned. At the same time, Tessie claims a shaded corner near the garden and transforms it into a tiny open-air classroom. She arranges stools from salvaged wood and paints a sign that reads, "Build safe, live safe." There, children sit beside adults as she teaches lessons people wish they had known earlier. How to identify safer open spaces, why emergency supplies should stay close at hand, and how storing water can protect a family when roads are blocked, and why a plan matters most before panic begins. Inspired by Joel's teaching, Manu digs a narrow trench and lines it with smooth stones. When he pours water into one end, it curves neatly toward the garden beds instead of flooding them. The adults smile, not because it is perfect, but because it works. It is more than an irrigation channel. It is a sign that even a child can help build resilience when someone trusts him with knowledge. Before the day ends, Tessie raises her voice so everyone can hear. "Store your water, tools, and first aid supplies where you can reach them quickly," she says, "and make sure every child knows where to run. In an emergency, every second matters." No one treats her words as background noise now. They have lived what happens when preparedness is missing. Weeks pass, and the ruins begin to change their meaning. What once looked barren becomes a living patchwork of green. Tomato plants hang heavy with red fruit. Herbs release sharp, comforting scents when the breeze brushes past. Families kneel side by side, hands deep in the earth, harvesting food they once thought they would never grow again. The camp is still marked by loss, but it is no longer defined by it. Soon, children race between rows of beans and cassava, their laughter bouncing off walls that have been rebuilt with more care and better understanding. The neighborhood starts to feel less like a wound and more like a mosaic, broken pieces rearranged into something that can still hold beauty. And because people now build with both memory and wisdom, every repaired corner carries more meaning than the one before it. At the center of it all, Tessie stands with a small wooden board in her hands. With patient strokes, she paints the words, "Jardin l'Espoir," Garden of Hope. Then she plants the sign at the entrance, where sunlight catches the letters and makes them glow. Manu reaches out to touch a climbing vine beside it, smiling in quiet disbelief. And Grandpa Joel, standing a step behind them, nods with mist in his eyes and pride he does not need to speak.
By then, it is clear that roots have taken hold in more than soil. They have taken hold in people, in the way neighbors share water, in the way children memorize evacuation routes, in the way walls are tested before trust is given back to them. Gardens feed stomachs, yes, but they also feed something harder to restore: confidence. Because disasters may break buildings, but they also reveal what communities are made of. Where others saw only rubble, these people planted food, knowledge, and courage. Where fear expected surrender, they answered with preparation. And where the earth shook them to the ground, they learned how to rise with wiser hands. Now the gardens sway gently over the transformed landscape, each leaf a quiet lesson in resilience. Joelle shows a child how to test whether a wall is stable. Tessie waters a row of seedlings, her smile no longer fragile. Manu adjusts his stone-lined channel, watching clear water thread through the beds like a promise kept. In the end, recovery is not only about what we rebuild, it's about how we grow after the shaking stops. And somewhere near the old cracked foundation, a tiny sprout still pushes upward, bright, determined, and alive. Hope, like a seed, grows quietly, but it grows all the same. And when people stand together, learn together, and rebuild together, then even after the hardest quakes, hope takes root.